Nyara A reporting for Kids First, and today I'm here with Jonathan Schnapp, the author of the new book, Order of the Nightshade, The Forest Beckons. Mr. Schnapp is an artist and illustrator who lives in Rochester, New York, and he's a multi-talented artist, including a photographer and a painter. Mr. Schnapp, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I flew through your book, and I loved the colorful illustrations and characters. I could definitely relate to the story, especially to Frank. I was wondering, what was your inspiration for the character of Frank?
You know, the inspiration for Frank, who's the main character of the book, and it's told from his perspective, was really my experience growing up. So Frank is a bear, and he's timid. He's uncomfortable with who he is in his surroundings. And that really comes through in how he interacts with the other people. And those are a lot of things that I really struggled with growing up as well.
Speaking of childhood, I'm sure like a lot of us went to summer camp as a kid. Did you choose the summer camp setting because it just worked for you in the book, or because of a specific experience you had when you were younger?
So I picked a summer camp setting partly because I grew up in a scouting program, and all the characters in the book, they're all there as part of a kind of a bird-themed scouting program in the middle of the woods. So I used a lot of my experiences in scouting and going to campgrounds similar to Camp Jaybird in the book. Summer camps are really interesting because it brings a lot of characters together that you wouldn't see together. You know, they're all strangers maybe, they don't have their parents, they don't have technology, so they're all there being forced to kind of interact with each other, and it creates some fun dynamics.
Speaking of your characters, it's probably really hard to choose favorites, but who was your favorite character to write and illustrate?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of the characters don't get a lot of, screen time in the book as background characters to the main story, but I tried to give them all, and I'm trying to give them all as we go through books 2 and 3, more like little focusy parts where it's the spotlights on them. In book 1, my favorite character is got to be Charlie, who is a tortoise, and he's slow like a tortoise is, but he's happy being slow, even though his parents give him some trouble and they want him to speed up, and the scouts are frustrated with him. But he's just happy doing slow things and enjoying nature and enjoying the time that he's got. And I think that's great.
I really loved how each of the characters had their own little pages and their own illustrations to illustrate the backgrounds of their story. That was a really fun part of the book. Moving on to more of a process part, did you start writing the words first or drawing the scenes first?
So graphic novels are a weird, form of art because they're so picture heavy, and they're so long. A comic book is typically written with a script first, which then goes to an artist. It's very kind of process oriented because they have to produce a lot of comics. As the artist and the illustrator, I had the luxury to be able to kind of develop my own process. So I started with an outline of the rough plot, which then of course went right out the window because things changed as I started working. But from that outline, I was able to kind of do thumbnail sketches, small little drawings to show how I wanted the pages laid out. And that's about where I would actually write the actual dialogue and the story, because it helped me to see the story visually as we were going through it.
That's really interesting. I never knew how people wrote comic books before. How long did the whole process take, including the outline, the writing, the illustrating, and of course the publishing?
So it's interesting in that, like, I started this as a side project. You don't start making money right away doing this. You kind of have to get your foot in the door and work up to it. So I had a day job at the same time, as well as having a family, and now I have a 5-month-old son here. So there's a lot of things going on all at once. For book 1, from getting the initial idea to being completely finished, it was probably over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of book 1, you ended the story with a cliffhanger. Do you have the second story already written, or is it still in your imagination or in the process?
Yeah. So I started actually thinking about what I wanted to do while I was still writing book 1. Partly because I needed to know how to set up going into the next book. And especially since I threw that outline out, I needed a new outline, and I needed to reevaluate where the story was going and what the characters want and what they're doing. So book number 2, I've been doing those sketches that I just talked about, kind of outlining the whole story. I've done that for most of the book. I have about 5 or 6 chapters out of potentially 7 or 8. So we're about 80% of the way written with that. And then from there, it'll go into final art, which will take most of the time.
I'm really excited to read that. Who do you hope, or like what audience do you hope to reach with your story?
Well, I hope to reach everyone. Like I think I dealt with a lot of bullying and feeling excluded, and I felt very uncomfortable being me and being different, and as different as I can be, just having my own interests and my own hobbies and my own way of looking at the world. And, so I hope everybody could get something out of that, because I think that's an important lesson, to listen to other people, to be open to other people's experiences. That's partly why I included all those spotlights of the different characters, because they all have their own experiences and struggles that they deal with. And I wanted to show that, everybody is coming from their own place and dealing with their own lives and their own struggles, and we might not see them, but even though kind of the mean characters in the book have their own struggles that they're dealing with.
Were the side characters based off of anyone in your life?
Nobody was ever, apart from the main characters really being based on me. The side characters, I think, they're all based a little bit on me, to some extent, different aspects of who I think I am, my approach to the world. But nobody in the book was ever based on anybody really alive that like I know in person.
Speaking of you, what inspired you to start illustrating, and how old were you when you first started writing or drawing?
I've always dabbled in drawing and painting and the arts, way back when I was, Frank's age. He has his own comic in the book. I never did anything quite in depth like that, but I definitely doodled, and I love to make little comics back when I was growing up. And from there, it just kind of builds up as you go. So you start with a small number of skills, and then I go into high school and I say, oh, I'm going to take some art classes here. And then college, I went and studied art. I never really started writing until probably a few years before I started working on Night J, Order of the Night J. That was kind of a recent addition. But I was doing paintings, kind of like the paintings you see behind me here. I don't know if you can see.
So cool.
Those are some of the paintings that I've done. And
wow.
that was how I got into storytelling, is I started doing these kind of cartoon animal paintings, and I really liked, like this one is a spooky painting, with some cats having
nice. That's so cool.
A little cat seance. So I started doing these paintings of cartoon animal characters, and I started thinking of them as being like pictures from a book, like a full story. So I decided one day I want to write the actual story that goes along with these pictures. And that's how it started.
That's really amazing. Those paintings are so cool.
Thank you.
For my last question, what were your favorite childhood graphic novels or books or stories?
Oh, that's really hard, because I actually did not really get into comics or graphic novels as a kid. I started getting into them more later in life. As for a favorite story growing up, I really liked, I remember reading, it was The Phantom Tollbooth was a favorite book. That's an old one, and I haven't read it in a long time. That was a favorite. I really enjoy books that are kind of magical and mysterious in a lot of ways, and I think that shows up in my writing.
Yeah, I also love books that are magical and mysterious. Yeah. I just have to say thank you so much for joining me, Jonathan Schnapp. Order of the Night J, The Forest Beckons is available online and at brick and mortar bookstores. I'm Nyara A reporting for Kids First. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of me or my awesome teammates' reviews. Bye!